Hi guys and welcome, gnembon here. In this series of videos I will be walking you through my implementation of this totally crazy and unnecessarily overpowered garden farm which I have built over the period of the last 4 months, here on the Minecraft server. After grabbing all the materials I realized again that it's way too much to fit in a single episode, so I'm turning it into a small survival mini-series. Over these episodes I will be showing the complete process of making a fully functional farm with all the necessary infrastructure around it, including the build and the aesthetic design as well. If you miss a few details about the farm itself, don't fret. I'll make a separate video with all the nitty-gritty of the design as one of the upcoming Fun Farms episode, which is my creative farm design series, so stay tuned for that. But for now we'll be doing the epic stuff first, so we can leave the technicalities for later. So kick back and enjoy. So what I've been up to, I was working on a bunch of other projects. We've installed a hostile mob switch in the nether in this world last time, and I was actually planning to do something in the nether and I started doing it. However, I got a bunch of requests from the guys in the Minecraft server saying that our garden farm is not too far and we'll be designing a new one. So a little bit of change of plans, we'll go back to the nether stuff next time. But for now let's look at the garden farm, and we've been collecting redstone from our witch farm and have a bunch of sugar boxes of redstone, so I thought okay, let's maybe do something guardian related. And before we get started, I just want to say that these survival episodes of mine are coming out so rarely, and for me survival doesn't matter if it's my world, if it's Minecraft server, it's the same thing really. So I'll be merging these two series. I'll be just essentially sharing once in a while when I have something really cool to show. A video of me doing survival doesn't matter if it's Minecraft server or here. So as I said, we have a bunch of shulker boxes full of redstone blocks, and as we all know right now, to do an efficient garden farm you need a lot of redstone blocks. The idea is to build an overpowered garden farm on the Minecraft server, while still being very simple and doesn't use any glitches, can produce massive amounts of items and XP, much more than you would ever need. Typically I keep restricting myself with certain conditions in mind, like keeping the monument or be single player friendly, but in this case everything is allowed as long as it would work with vanilla Minecraft, follow vanilla rules, just to show that we can still have an overpowered mob farm using only intended and simple mechanics of the game, while being friendly to the server CPU. At the end result is going to be spectacular, and we might end up with the most powerful mob farm built in survival Minecraft, at least to date. So I could build this farm in the creative world and build it again on the Minecraft server, but then my own world wouldn't benefit from it, so that's no good. But because I know quite well how it would look like at least from the overworld perspective of the spawner side, since I have all these redstone blocks here available, let's do first something in survival. Then let's do some experiments on the copies of this world and build a final version on the Minecraft server after all the testing is done. This way I'll have some version of this farm in my own world. Maybe it's not the most optimal one, but at least we got something. So before we go and build it, let's look at this old concept of garden farm that I shown last year. So last time I've shown this concept for a garden mob farm where guardians essentially spawn in those water channels, then drop into those water streams that get pushed into the nether. And I was amazed how many guardians it was spawning, but I thought it's not a good guardian drop farm, and this was actually a problem because this was a bug in the carpet mod that was actually counting incorrectly spawned mobs and spawn rates, so this farm actually produces twice as many mobs as I initially thought. Let's go to the other side. As you can see, this is all mental, however it still needs changing. This is the stuff that I've been kind of tinkering over the summer a little bit. Now it's burning all the guardians, so we are not losing any FPS drops here, but you could technically stand here, kill all those guardians for XP, and that's essentially how the farm was working, or you can just drop them down. The items would cycle around. Just maybe let's turn on the drop mode. Like so. So they should technically all die over here. The drops should be able to be pushed over here. And eventually they'll land and go back to the overworld. So this is the general gist of the farm that we'll be using. In this case, there will be a couple of things will be changing. So first of all, let me go first to the overworld. As you guys all know, the conditions for mobs to fall down through water or guardians is a little bit different, so unfortunately we cannot use these pistons over here, which was quite convenient because the other option is to use dispensers from the top, and that's what we have to use in this case. But from my initial testing, this concept is very powerful and allows for large scaling of the farm, so it doesn't use too much CPU because it's not happening really much here, and you can scale it really well. So you can, for example, if you are playing with multiplayer, you can really rack the spawning spaces and you can really rack the mob caps and get ridiculous amounts of items and XP. Way more than a single player would ever need. So let's go back to survival and build this farm in our own world first. Okay, so before we go to our fishy project, let me show you something else that I did just for myself. So this is in my own world. This is a triple cave spider spawner. So the issue I have, little annoyance, is the fact that if you have a mob switch like I do have in both dimensions, the issue is that to get lots of XP, to use an XP farm, you have to get to the spawn, turn off the mob switch, get to the farm, use the farm, get back, turn off the mob switch again. So I needed something for quick XP just to know that I can mend a pickaxe or fix an elytra, so this is essentially ideal. So this is cave spider spawner setup, very simple. Here just water streams to put them into middle, janky ass. Hell, I just used whatever blocks I had. Yeah, and this is a little bit of a water blade just to keep them at bay, because some of them decide to climb the walls, and this is actually very good at keeping them doing it. So they essentially, the worst case scenario, they will just cycle through a couple times and they'll bump into it. And here's also something that I've been kind of umming and ahhing a little bit, how to do it properly, how to merge them together. End up with a very simple solution, just a cobblestone wall. These spiders will be pushed by this water stream over here into the center, pressed against this cobble wall, which makes them go up, and then they end up partially in this water stream over here, which will elevate them a little bit to the top. And here I'm using transparent blocks, so glass, with the new 1.12 water mechanics, and with mobs 1.12, so I said not 1.13. You need non-solid blocks to float the entities up effectively, efficiently, and then they concentrate over here, and you can see here meet my other account, alter ego, his face on the back of his face. And he can demonstrate for us. It's actually very easy to use. You just need to swipe them off. Position myself, and you get a lot of XP. At least, you know, if you have to mend 1 or 2 pickaxes or fix an elytra, that's more than you would ever need for these kind of reasons. So, and you can use it even with the mob switch turned on. It's also very conveniently placed. I found these 3 spawners right next to my mining outpost. So, you know, that's what typically happens. You end up here trying to dig a mine shaft, and then you realize, dang it, my pickaxe is almost broke. So here's a very convenient thing right next to it. I have also 2 other spawners, this one and this one. This one, they're also in triple configuration. However, they are not as convenient because this one is a different type of a mob, so I thought, okay, let's use these 3. So it's that would be sweet to have a sextuple spawner, but yeah, it's not gonna happen. Yeah, so these transparent blocks are because of the 1.12 changes, the same reasons we have to use redstone blocks in the garden farms these days. We can use TNT or you can use observers. TNT are kind of tricky to use, observers are much more expensive than redstone blocks and non-renewable, so redstone blocks are the best. One thing that's tricky with these spiders is that despite them being more than 1 block away from you and technically not being able to reach you, they can still get you if you get to them up close, which is pretty weird because it shouldn't happen. This is kind of I would say it's a bug, because they are not in a position that they can reach you, but they can still attack you through the block. So let's build our garden farm. The destination of the garden farm will be quite close really to the passive mob farms, which may end up messing up a little bit our portal linking stuff, so I might just be able to use one or the other, but that's fine, I can manage. And so let's get to building. So I also received a bunch of questions. Do 1.13 water mechanics change anything with the garden farms? And the answer is no, they haven't changed the mechanics at all. Everything behaves pretty much as expected. The The only thing that may change, and it will change probably, they're gonna add a hostile mob to the oceans, which in most cases, if you are building a garden farm, it's very easy to spawn proof it. You remove water from the garden farm area and that's it, and then light up the caves. When they add hostile mobs to the oceans, it will be very hard to spawn proof a guardian farm without building a full perimeter, but we'll be adjusting our designs when they come up with the final 1.13 version, so nothing to worry about at this point. So let's get to building. So guys, so the ocean monument is gone, so I have prepared a bunch of ocean monuments in my life before and I'm getting faster and faster with it. By far, I think the fastest method to do it is, first of all, if you can disable mob spawning, just so it don't bother you, that's definitely point number one. So in this case, you have a mob switch, that there's no problem. If you have two accounts, or if you can play with your friends, you can just let the other one stand next to a mob spawner, like the spiders farm that I just showed you before, just like as our side project. It's gonna be as effective as a full-on mob switch. Then the easiest way to do it is just to remove the ocean itself. Just put a beacon down and just mine it off. It's gonna take you about half an hour. Then put up the walls around it, just AFK. At it, trying to essentially putting all the sands. Sands are not directly on top of the water, they are on kind of stills. Let's just go downstairs. They are on slabs. You can see that here. Yeah. So it's easier to remove them later on. Let me go upstairs. And we can do it in a spectacular fashion. I can do all of it at the same time. And also, you can see some squids are spawning, no problem at all. And then to remove the water, there's a method by Tok Jane, which was featured at Ilmango's channel, just using flying machine. However, those are a little bit different than Ilmango's, is because, I'll be honest, like I'm not really good at slimestone, and this to set up all those machines without any help of any things like schematica. This took me about 1.5 hours. I'm on the third backup right now, on the third world, and I screw up twice already. So any help really that we can minimize number of slimestone is, I think, beneficial. So instead of doing shorter sweepers with where they have all the slime blocks protected by those blocks to the sides, what I decided to do is to have a longer sweeper so they can finish essentially like an 18 blocks. It's like very long stripe of water, and then the only thing you have to do is to put a little more leaves to the sides of it. But I think like it took me half an hour to put all the leaves, and it's gonna take me a short time to remove it afterwards, so I think this is the best way to do it really. Like if you're not super experienced in slimestone, all these kind of things. So in general, a couple hours and it should be all done, and now we just need to enable the machines, and we have to power this piston over here to start the machine this way. So we have to trigger this observer and should be fine, so let's do it. So these are really cool machines because they'll essentially clear all this water going back and forth one layer at a time. It will take them, I don't know, 5-10 minutes maybe. As you can see, they'll use 5 machines. In original Tokjan's idea, that would be using 10 return stations. Here I'm using half of it. And you may notice that it's also a little bit larger than the Ocean Monument. I decided to cut out a little bit over a larger area just to remove the monument. Here we will need only 4 of those stations, so that's pretty decent. And within literally no time, we will be able to remove all this water here. Okay guys, so the farm is built. I have my trusty alter ego logged in a little bit to help me demonstrate a bunch of things. So we went with a kind of like a minimalistic design. So just farm, and then I needed some kind of a gradient to go from the redstone blocks to the ocean. So I just went with this carpet pattern, so it looks like a core that melts in the water and just dissipates over into the ocean. I think it looks pretty swell for kind of like a minimalistic thing. Right now the farm is on, there is water in the tanks, however nothing is spawning because we have the mob switch on. And I've been testing the crap out of this farm just to come up with the best design. So this one here yields about 200,000 drops per hour, which sounds like a bit, but it's not that great really. It's way too big, way too big. We have 6 spawning layers, we can just drop down. We have 6 spawning layers, which is way too much. With 2, I think the results were 230,000 drops per hour. However, with more spawning layers, the effects are we can actually stack more players and get much more drops when we get much more available slots in the mob cap. So that's essentially it. Also in terms of the 1.13, the only difference for now I see is probably we won't be able to get these kind of nice corners of water. I showed a couple of times how to make them. Not all people got the memo. But in 1.13 probably we'll be able just to put like a block, like a glass pane probably in the corner and be able to support it without them flowing in. However, they will probably change it because it's kind of overpowered how we can flood the area right now with 1.13. So I just hopped back into Spectator just to show a bunch of things. So the farm is very simple in design. We'll be modifying it slightly for the SciCraft server. And here we have our account, AFKing, more than 32 blocks away from the portals because we want the this pigments to despawn essentially. Oh, let's see. See, I don't know if you have seen, but there was a bunch of guardians spawning for a second, and that's actually one of the problems we have because our mob switch here in the overworld is not supported by a permaloader. The permaloaders were not in shops when I built this first mob switch, so occasionally after every 45 seconds, because we are actually on the world diagonal, so it messes up a little bit with the chunk loading, we can have individual guardians to spawn. I will be showing this on the other side. And then the drops are being cycled back to the side. We are outside of the area because I just figured out that if you have 2 portals that link, and if you have another portal within the same 8x8 area, it will essentially use that link rather than create its own. So we couldn't have actually collection just underneath the farm because that will essentially use the link that the guardians use. So we have to move the collection to the side so it's outside of the area, as you can see. So you might be thinking that this is a very, very simple design as well, and I can just build it in my own world and it's gonna be all fine. However, there is a little bit of an issue, and this is with portal linking. If you build it in your own world, if you're in your single player world and you make sure that nothing else spawns and the farm has very good rates, then it's not a big problem because the guardians that are going through the portals will be refreshing the links fast enough that we don't have to worry about lag spikes and so on and so on. However, what typically happens, like if you're playing with other friends or if you did a sloppy job in like lighting up all the caves, the rates of the farm will be slow enough at times that it won't be sufficient to support all the portal linking, which would result in a very, very choppy experience, not only for you on the server, but also for everybody else. So I will be showing another design that's altered a little bit slightly to allow to mitigate that a little bit, so we can actually have this kind of a farm running even on very low rates, even on busy servers. But for now, hold on a little bit, or if you understand how portal linking works and what are its limitations, feel free to do so. It's a very simple design. Okay, so let me go to the nether side and show you how this all works. Oops, on the nether side. So we are here in the nether checking out how this turns out. So we have a simple portal that essentially sends the guardians through. Right now, as I said, the mob switch is on, but as we can see, once in a while, every 45 seconds, we have a few fishes spawning because of the position of the ocean monument on the diagonal and the fact that we don't have a permaloader to support our primitive mob switch. It doesn't matter too much in most cases, but essentially that's what might happen. And here we have essentially 3 options we can do with the fishes. First of all, you can just drop them to death, and that's the simplest thing to do. Is just once in a while we push the drops into this ice stream or ice, and then whatever falls into those guys gets pushed back into the overworld. So that's actually very simple, just drops only with a proper, oh well, we can actually witness a little bit of it. Send, boom, boom. Very easy things. We have 2 soccer players kicking the balls. Okay, it's fine, it's cracked me up. And never mind. Obviously, drops is not the only thing that we typically want from Guardians farms. That's why we have 2 extra sides to this farm. First, this has to do with looting. So in this case, we are standing here in this chamber. We have all the fishes hankering down around us. We have these trapdoors around us which protect any fishes to go inside of our hitbox or essentially these blocks, so we can just stood here and just swipe with your sword and then loot those fishes for the looting drops. So with 1 million drops per hour regular, technically speaking, this site would be possible to get 2.5 million drops per hour, and it is possible. I tried it and it worked really well. The problem is that you have to have a very busy server, and my servers can only support, I would say, up to 1 million, 1.5 million drops, and then the TPS drops drastically. So I was just running it on 5 TPS on 2.5 million drops per hour. So it is possible, maybe in the future, I don't know, maybe somebody will come up with a solution, a better solution, because the main issue is the XP. So here we don't care about the XP, so when the player sits here, all the XP gravitates toward the player and then essentially end up in this lava, which destroys it. On the other end, we have this XP station, and this is also quite simple. We just send those fishes over here, they just collect in this area. Depending on the size of the room and the shape of the room, we are able to do, and of the max entity cramming setting of your world, we are able to store different amount of guardians, since it all depends on us. And then we just open these trapdoors, grab a potion, and just throw the potion into the guardians, and that's how we can, that's how we can get rid of the extra XP if it's too much. We can get their XP. And this is a little item, an XP orb filter, so XP orbs are significantly larger than items and they don't fit between those end rods and stairs. So by just having this, we'll be able to burn all the drops and get the XP. So this is the opposite, essentially doing the opposite thing what the other side is doing. So here we only care about the XP orbs, and we burn the rest. So let me turn the farm on, or rather disable the mob switch, and I can demonstrate a little bit how this works in practice. So before we go and check how the farm operates on the nether side, I'll touch a very important subject, which is chunk loading. So it is very highly recommended, and I would say mandatory, to chunk load a 5x5 area of chunks around the center chunk where the items are going through to keep them entity processing. If we don't do that, all the guardians and all the items will eventually be accumulating and potentially not be entity processing, and then we'll build up all the entities in our world, which may lead us to crash our world. So that's something very important, and I would actually think to keep those chunk loaders naked and not disable it at all. If you don't have any loopy hoppers, this should disable it itself at any point. Even if you are permaloading your world, it should be all fine. As you can see, we have a bunch of other chunk loading setups here from our animal farm. Just happen to be next to each other, so there's some overlap, so I disable these hoppers just in case. And yeah, and so this is a very important thing to keep in mind and to keep your world safe. You guys see this stream of guardians? This is just with one account and the crooked farm, so this is 200,000 drops per hour, which is about 30 guardians per second, which is way more than you would never need for like XP needs and stuff like that. So this is really cool. And as I said, they are essentially dropping to their death, and once in a while we push their drops with those pistons into those ice streams, and then we cycle them back through the overworld. This is one option, and up to 1 million drops per hour, no problem, no hoppers, so it's very easy to do. Now there's other options to this farm. This side is for looting, as I explained. The main reason is to get all the rare drops, mainly clownfish, which is the rarest drops in the game. Currently in 1.12, in 1.13 this might change because of the clownfish fishes. We don't know how this looks will look yet. So in order to use the looting chamber, we just need to, we have these channels here that will lock the guardians so that they cannot go into here. So we just need to unlock it, which will open those fence gates, and then need to redirect them, those, and then all the guardians that drop, essentially the height is perfect enough so they drop here at minimum health and then get pushed along by other guardians into this chamber over here. And one thing that keeps the farm safe is actually entity cramming, because with right now they are going at 30 guardians per second, which is in the planned guardian farm on the Cyclops, so that will be about 20% of the farm capabilities. So 30 is still a lot. So that's what essentially what makes it safe, is the fact that even if you leave it running whatever, it'll still just essentially gather those guardians and kill them by themselves. So to jump in, you just need to flick this lever and it will essentially run the collection. So once in a while we move those end rods back and forth in order to get the loot collected. So as a survival player, what you need to do, you need to just jump in and be very wary that we are in a dangerous position. This end rod here keeps us so we don't end up in lava, and we can just, and oh, and I added one thing to the carpet mod, so we can have, so every time we kill any mob, it will tell us how many of them we have killed, because right now it's hardly we can see anything because of the number of guardians, and we won't be able even to know if we are killing any guardians or not. So, and I can just sit here and I can start using my sword, and every time I swipe my sword, so any second or so, I'll be killing like 50 of them. In this case we get 30 per second, but it can be scaled up much higher. Obviously we have to eat, because we'll be taking lots of damage. Sorry guys if you cannot watch it, it looks really bad. But we are getting all the XP, and most of the XP is actually getting burned in the lava, which is fine, which is what we want. And this is also a very good way to get the XP as well. Obviously you wouldn't be doing with an elytra like I do right now, and you will have like a resistance beacon, and you can get a cooked fish in your offhand and therefore AFK infinitely without any worry about your health. So that essentially is the looting part of the farm. In order to redirect these guardians to the next chamber, what we just need to do is first of all we have to open the other chamber, like so, and then close this one. So yeah, so when I'll be doing it, I'll probably just have some system that will do it automatically for us, because this is kind of a pain in the butt a little bit, so we have to do it every time you do it. You go. Okay, so these are cleared, and we can go to the XP side. So this is very similar in terms of the collection, except that here, as I said, the difference is we want to get all the XP and none of the drops. And as they're working with those guardians, they're typically going to have a messed up inventory. That's kind of a typical. So obviously we need a brewer on the Cyclops server, but this is good for testing. And you only need to do is you just need to aim high and get all the XP in your world. It's much more than you would ever need. So with this 30 guardians per second is essentially the dose of XP. You get maximum XP for 6 players at the same time. And this does some testing with 6 players. You're essentially getting constantly 180,000 XP. And this is with just one player AFKing in the overworld side. If we add more players, which is very possible, you can rack it up 5-6 times, no problem. You can still have all the XP. It's very efficient on the potions. You can see we have all the enough guardians already. They are dying. We can throw our new portion. We have all the XP. It looks really cool. I love it. Yeah, this gets pretty messy pretty quickly. So let's build it on the Cyclops server.